Today we're going to have a completely non-controversial video, just talking about the markets, taking a step back, taking a breather. I know a lot of people got stressed from my last video, a lot of argument going on there. I got dislike botted. A lot of people unsubscribed as a result of that video. We're going to take a deep breath and we're going to talk about the markets today. And hopefully it's not that controversial, because although there are some things that are obviously open to my interpretation, that's the point of this channel, is to give my opinion of things. This should obviously be a little bit less sketchy than the previous video was. So anyway, I want to start off talking about Bitcoin here. I actually scaled back a little bit of my Bitcoin position. Not a lot, not like 50% or anything crazy like that, but I did scale back a little bit of that position. The reason why is I'm starting to see systemic risk increase. When we had the Tether situation, when we started seeing the tensions with Bitfinex, we started seeing people that had CNBC shows invite Bitfinex PR managers to come on. We started seeing all of these different situations associated with Bitfinex, and basically a PR disaster for one of the world's largest Bitcoin exchanges. I believe systemic risk has increased, and as a result of that, I wanted to scale back my position in Bitcoin slightly. It's been consolidating in this $8,000 to $8,300 level or so. And when Bitcoin consolidates, you guys know there's only one of two options that can happen. It can either break out to the upside or it can break out to the downside. Now, historically, Bitcoin has actually broken out to the upside when it consolidates like this. However, while I do think that that's the higher probability scenario, I don't want to have it so that there was this opportunity to lock in. Now remember, I have an average buy-in price of $6,057 before I sold. I am already up in the course of roughly 2 weeks, almost 40% on my investment, right? Again, remember that I made that investment roughly around the night of November 11th to November 12th. This was when Bitcoin Cash was threatening to do the cashing, which we're actually going to talk about Bitcoin Cash in this video, because it seems like that threat is coming up again. So it'll be interesting to see what happens this time, if anything. But anyway, in the course of just 2 weeks, a little bit over it, okay, actually a little bit under it, I have been able to make roughly 40% on my investment. Now, be mindful of the fact that in the stock market, somewhere between 7 and 12% on an annual basis is normal, depending on who you ask. If you ask David Ramsey, he will tell you 12%. He will swear by that 12% figure. That's far too high. At least in my opinion it is, okay? So to me, it's somewhere between 7 and 10%, depends on who you ask, and that's not with inflation taken out of the equation, right? If you take inflation into the equation, then it's roughly 4 to 7%, right? Somewhere in that ballpark. So anyway, the point of all of this is that 40% in 2 weeks is an alpha producing trade, at least in my opinion, okay? Even though Bitcoin is much more volatile and higher risk than investing in the S&P 500, 40% in 2 weeks, it's real hard to argue that that didn't produce alpha. So I want to take some off the table, especially as I start to see systemic risk start to increase. I think it's a good idea for me personally. You should make that decision based off of your confidence in the market. Right? If you're real skeptical about Bitcoin, sell a larger percentage of your position than I did. Go to 50%, go to 75%. If you're more confident in Bitcoin, then don't sell any of your position. Continue to hold, because we know with Bitcoin at the moment that a lot of people anticipate it to go up to $10,000 by the end of the year. So if we start to see Bitcoin break out to the upside, then we're probably going to see a lot more people jump in because they want to ride that wave upward to 10,000. At the very least, we want to get the over 9,000 memes, right? So that's just something interesting to note. I did want to scale down my position slightly because I'm starting to see systemic risk in the market start to increase. So that's my opinion on Bitcoin. You're probably more interested in my opinion on Ethereum, however, which has had a very substantial run up over the past couple of days. You guys know that I've been bullish on Ethereum. I said that I wouldn't start selling any Ethereum until it reached over 400, and likely not until it reached 500. Well, I decided to make the decision to scale back my position size on this even more slightly than I did with Bitcoin. I mean, really, I sold a very small portion of my position in Ethereum, mostly because of the fact that every time that it's broken above 400, it always tends to reverse back to that $300 level. However, it does look like we're actually going to make $400 the new 300. And it will be interesting to see whether or not Ethereum can break out to the true upside and break above that $500 level. In the event that we see Ethereum continue to go up like this and actually break above 500, I will scale back my position. Okay, I will sell Ethereum above $500. Not all of it, because I would still like to ride the wave. If we start seeing Ethereum break above 500, you just don't know where it can go, because we know Ethereum has had huge booms before, mostly back in June/July, right? We saw a huge boom back then. So I would say when it comes to Ethereum, you're going to want to watch it fairly closely, and at this point in time, I wouldn't sell out of your position. You might want to scale it back slightly just so that your break-even point is a little bit lower. More importantly, the reason I did that was to ensure, even if we go back to the $300 level, I'm still going to make a substantial profit. That's what I wanted to ensure with these positions. The point is, take your profits. That shouldn't be controversial. Take profits when you can, and ensure that you come out ahead with this thing no matter what happens with the market. Okay? So I'm scaling back my position very slightly on Ethereum. I still have the majority of my position, and I will start to scale out of it a little bit if it breaks above the $500 level. Otherwise, I will continue to hold Ethereum basically no matter what it does. Okay? Now, moving on to Litecoin here, you guys know that I've always viewed it as an attractive alternative investment to Bitcoin, although it's actually becoming less of an attractive alternative to Bitcoin, mostly because the correlation between Bitcoin and Litecoin is starting to go down. At least I believe it is. It's been a while since I've calculated the weekly correlation returns of Bitcoin and Litecoin. However, anecdotally, I can say from watching the two, it no longer seems like Litecoin is all that correlated with Bitcoin, and it certainly doesn't seem to move up in the same scale that Bitcoin does. So maybe it's not a perfect alternative in your portfolio anymore. However, I still consider it to be a strong investment, especially as we're starting to see it become more and more undervalued relative to Bitcoin, right? We sort of saw this pop up from these low points for Litecoin. However, it's still doing fairly poorly against Bitcoin if we look at it over the long term here, and now it's actually doing fairly poorly against Ethereum as well. So something to be mindful of moving into the future. Now, I wanted to provide a real quick thought on Bitcoin and Bitcoin Cash, because it seems like Bitcoin Cash is starting to pump up a little bit again. People have some concerns as to whether or not Bitcoin Cash is going to take over Bitcoin. There's a theory going around at the moment that the difficulty adjustment for Bitcoin that's happening will result in the miners all switching over to Bitcoin Cash. People will try to cash out of Bitcoin. They won't be able to because the hashing power is not on the Bitcoin network, yet the difficulty will still be high for the next 2 weeks, and this will be the big attempt for Bitcoin Cash to take over Bitcoin. And indeed, Bitcoin Cash has sort of been moving up over the past couple of days or so. However, I still suspect that this will not happen, and in fact, I actually see it as less likely than it was that night nearly 2 weeks ago. I suspect, especially because we're starting to see Bitcoin really isn't moving all that much, there's still way too much ground for Bitcoin Cash to cover, and might be able to cover a lot of this ground. Who knows, maybe it catches up with Ethereum again, although I don't see that as particularly likely, but you just never know with Bitcoin Cash, with the insane pumps that it actually has. And I know that people aren't going to want to miss out on the next pump. However, I suspect because the first pump failed, people are going to be very skeptical if there's another pump for Bitcoin Cash. So I do not think there's any threat for the cashing happening yet again. However, it is something to be mindful of. It is something that we're going to want to watch closely over the next couple of days. I don't think the likelihood of it happening is all that high, but I want to point it out for anybody that's watching the market closely and seeing this run up in Bitcoin Cash recently. So just wanted to point that out. Dash had an amazing run up recently, right, over the past week and a half or so, all the way up at $562 now. And I know for the last time I talked about Dash, a lot of people were pissed off at me. And some people went as far as to say that because I like Monero, that means that I can't like Dash. In other words, I have chosen Monero over Dash. I want to clarify and say that it was just a coincidence that I brought up Monero after Dash in that video. In terms of why I brought up Monero after Dash, had nothing to do with the fact that I was comparing the two of them. In fact, I don't even see the two as comparable. I know that Dash previously had roots as a privacy coin. I no longer view it as such. I view it as a cryptocurrency that is attempting to take over Bitcoin's market share, plain and simple. I see Monero as being in a totally different market, focused on privacy, whereas Dash, it is optional. It is a feature of Dash, but it is not the primary focus of Dash. And if you believe that to be wrong, that's fine, that's your opinion. But I want to be very clear that the reason I don't like Dash has nothing to do with me being a Monero fanboy. And I'm not even that much of a Monero fanboy. I just know that this cryptocurrency has a ton of shills going for it. And I know that any cryptocurrency that has the amount of passion that Monero does has the potential to pump at any given moment, because people will not want to miss the train. And indeed, Monero has almost doubled since I made that video. I think it was around $90 or so. And Monero actually, I believe, tested around 180 since that video. Of course, Dash has done fairly well since that video as well, but it is something worth noting. I know that Dash has the ability to do private transactions. I know that historically, before Dash rebranded, that was the primary focus of Dash. However, since the rebranding, I think the key focus for Dash is just to replace Bitcoin. Monero, on the other hand, I do not see the intention as trying to replace Bitcoin, but rather to be the #1 privacy coin, the #1 anonymous coin, so that if you use any transaction with Monero, there is no way to track who it is that you are or any of your other previous transactions. Just wanted to point that out for everybody. The reason I don't like Dash, the two main reasons are: #1, I think that the DAO organizational structure is inefficient and will require a substantial amount more time and innovation before it gets to the point where it's actually as efficient as a centralized organization. As a result of that, I think that the Treasury will continue to see wasted funds on projects that do not generate positive ROI, especially because the masternodes that vote on those Treasury projects do not have the means, do not have the skill set by which to value whether or not a particular campaign was positive or negative based off of the value that it provided. I do not think they have that skill set. So I just wanted to point that out, because I know a lot of people were critical of the fact that I brought up one example of the Treasury wasting funds. It was just one example. It really was. There's many more examples that I could find. However, I don't want to call out names, #1. And #2, people already know this, okay? I guarantee you that even the people in the Dash community are aware of the fact that funds get wasted all the time in that Treasury program. So just wanted to emphasize that. #1 is that I think that the DAO structure needs serious work before it can be efficient and compete with a centralized structure. The second reason why I am not a fan of Dash is because its transaction volume is substantially less than Litecoin, yet it's being valued higher than Litecoin. And I don't believe, when it comes to basically being a substitute for Bitcoin, right? They're both trying to be substitutes for Bitcoin. Because Litecoin has the higher transaction volume and they're both trying to be digital cash, so to speak, transactions are the #1 fundamental indicator. Whereas with Bitcoin, you can make the digital gold argument, the store of value argument. When it comes to replacements for Bitcoin that are just trying to focus on the transaction side of things, naturally the number of daily transactions is going to be the most important key indicator for those cryptocurrencies, for those, so to speak, Bitcoin clones. And at the moment, Litecoin has substantially more transaction volume than Dash does. Will that change after evolution? I don't know. But what I do know is that you are either paying too much of a premium for Dash, or Litecoin is undervalued substantially. I don't know which one it is, and because of that, I don't want to take a bet on Dash in the event that it's overvalued. I want to emphasize that. It has nothing to do with the fact that I think Monero is a superior cryptocurrency, and I also do think, people mention to me, the community opinion is clearly not holding back Dash if it sees the value going all the way this high. And that's a fair argument. However, I do know that the pre-mine, or not the pre-mine, I keep saying pre-mine, the fast mine, and all the other concerns that Dash has associated with its founder and associated with whether or not there's a backdoor key, all of these things, in my opinion, they do hold down Dash. Maybe not in terms of market value at the moment. There's plenty of capital in this market that truly doesn't care about where it goes. But in the long term here, if Dash ever does get to the point where it attempts to replace Bitcoin as a transaction medium, I do think that those concerns are going to get brought to the forefront, and it's going to be very difficult to put those concerns down. In a similar fashion as to what we see with Zcash. Everyone doubts Zcash with the trusted setup, despite the fact that the developers for Zcash have actually contributed some of the most useful information and technologies into the cryptocurrency space. So it's just the nature of things. It will hold down Dash. I don't know by how much it will hold down Dash, but I believe that it will in the long term. That's my personal opinion. Of course, that's what this channel is all based on. And of course, I know I said this video wasn't going to be controversial, and it ended up being so anyway, but I just wanted to bring that up because a lot of people were pissed off at me when I talked about Dash in one of my previous videos. I wanted to add some clarity to the situation and be very clear that the reason I don't like Dash, or the reason I wouldn't invest in Dash is what I should say, has nothing to do with my preference for Monero or any other cryptocurrency. Okay? So anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Just wanted to provide an update on the markets and my thoughts. As usual, if you would like to support me, there are some Amazon affiliate links in the description. I receive a small commission anytime you make an order within the next 24 hours after clicking one of those links, even if it's not for the item that's linked. So check those out if you're interested. Otherwise, leave a like, comment, and subscription, and I will get back to you as soon as possible. Thank you for watching.